Guitar Villains is brought to you by American Musical Supply. Just visit AmericanMusical.com for your unique coupon code. This is just for listeners of Guitar Villains. Anything you need, whether it's picks, guitar strings, cables, a capo, all those small little accessories, all the way up to the big stuff like a new guitar, an amp, all the gear you could ever want is at American Musical Supply. They also have no interest financing, so you can play now, pay later. Use the link in the description for your coupon code to use on your next gear purchase. Thanks to American Musical Supply for sponsoring Guitar Villains. Now let's get to the show. Welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of Guitar Villains. We have somebody very special, somebody who has been highly requested, maybe the most perfect guitar villain yet, Paul Gilbert. And I've taken so much influence from Paul in my guitar playing life, particularly his alternate picking patterns. I just have infused certain stylings into my playing, and I'm very grateful for him to have existed to put that out into the ether for me to adapt into my musicianship. We get into a lot of different things. Notably, Paul has his guitar in his hands pretty much the whole episode. He plays a ton. Normally I don't ask guests to play, but he had his guitar ready to go. As you guys know, he's super fun and very energetic and ready to talk about everything under the sun. We talk about his new album, his favorite gear, the history of music. He's like a jukebox of songs and maybe a little bit of a Paul Gilbert rant. So without further ado, let's get into it. Guitar Villains, Paul Gilbert. Welcome to Guitar Villains, the show where we deconstruct and decode the guitar. And Paul, my wife had a great time. I think you may have been playing that guitar, one similar, at your NAMM performance, the last winter NAMM. You had a purple suit and that guitar, and she wanted me to let you know that she really enjoyed that show. Obviously, I did too, goes without saying, but she really enjoyed it, and she's like a 90s, thousands girl. To reach that like Avril Lavigne, Paramore, Blink-182, Taylor Swift demographic, I think is high praise for you.
Right on. We'll tell her thank you very much. And now Avril Lavigne, I've heard a little bit of Paramore, and I got a good impression from them. Are they Canadian?
I am going to have to get IT on that one.
The reason I'm saying this is because I want to play a Katie Lang song right now, and that would be a tie-in, because I know Avril Lavigne is Canadian. The Canadian band, let me play some Katie Lang. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, no, it's in E. So I can feel all my troubles. When look in my eye. I love that song. And anyway, that's what I'm into lately, like learning all the vocal melodies that I heard up until now.
Yeah, I've seen you play rattle off songs like a jukebox. I know that's one of your many talents. I envy that. I know a lot of songs. Like if I'm playing the song where you turn on the radio and name the artist, I'm pretty quick with that. But knowing the songs, especially the melodies, that's really key. I admire that about you.
The guitars, the things that we learn as guitar players, we learn things where the first finger gets to stay in the same place the whole time.
Mm.
And our first finger just gets to kind of forget. It's just like, stay there, don't ever move anywhere except that fret, and you'll be okay. And you can play, You can do a pretty good rambling man with the first finger in one spot. But then if you get the melody, I've never played the melody before. Let's see if I can. It'd be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a fifth. So. And the fact that I could do that first take is like that. That's what you get when you start learning melody, because the vocalists use the same licks.
Yeah.
They go like, oh, that's that lick from Some Kind of Wonderful, and from Jeremiah was a bullfrog, and just like guitar, you hear somebody play, and you go like, oh, I know what that is, because that's that Ace Frehley solo, and that's the Joe Perry solo, and the guy Hart played that, so, and Ted Nugent. So everybody uses the same vocabulary,
right?
But as but the first time you try to play a vocal line on guitar is horrible, because like everything is wrong, and it's lots of you need to slide into things, and so you hit the wrong note first, and you slide into the right one, and not used to hitting the wrong one. So it's it's really the learning curve. But once you get into it, it starts to be there's this common language, and a lot of it, like the first step, I would say, if you learn the bass part to obla di obla da. It's just all over the place. You got F, back to B flat, E flat, and that move is you're playing the root. You slide up to your third, and that slide is everything. Like all the cool singers slide into their thirds, and so you got to, whether you bend it or slide it, with a slide or your finger, you got to be able to find that stuff. And that's and really all the best blues guitar players do that anyway. But a lot of people, have this thing like, oh, I don't like blues, it's too whatever, so I'm only going to play scales. And it's really hard to find. If you just learn obla di obla da bass line and play like 3 times, you'll be so much forward you won't believe it.
Good advice.
The coffee's kicking in. Woohoo!
No, this is great. This is the most I've learned in the intro of this podcast yet. So I'm glad you.
The thing is, like, I have a lot of hearing loss. When you talk to a person who has hearing loss, all they do is talk because they're scared to listen because they know they can't hear.
Well, this is a good forum for that. So you're in the right place. The show,
I've got you on a fader, so whenever you talk, I can crank you way up.
Oh, beautiful. Great. So the show is called Guitar Villains because I think villains are cooler than heroes. And I've always found the characters are deeper, more memorable. And I want to ask you, out of all the movie or comic book supervillains out there, would you say you identify with any of them? It doesn't have to be their evil ways. It can be, some of the parallel, because villains and heroes, they have a lot of parallels aside from, their devious plots versus protecting the earth. So is there anybody that you particularly identify with, whether it's purely image or...
Well, my son he was watching Lego Batman the other night.
Oh, okay.
And I was surprised because I thought the Lego version is going to be lame.
Oh no, the Lego's great.
It was really funny. Like it was to me, I've enjoyed it way more than the regular Batman. Yeah. And the dialogue with the Joker, I'm actually, the Joker to me kind of grosses me out a little bit. Like it's just a lot of makeup. Right. And the real one, and too much makeup on anybody is just sort of, yeah. But anyway, he was Lego Joker, and like nobody would be. He was trying to scare people and be a bad guy, and everybody was like, Batman's coming. I'm not worried about you. And then finally, when Batman did come, Batman's like, you're not really my worst enemy, at all, And the Joker was like really getting upset because nobody was getting scared enough or worried enough about him. Mm-hmm. He was losing his mojo.
Well, you definitely have the right guitar for the Joker. I didn't even think about that. We've had a couple Jokers on this podcast already. I'm not going to go there because I have my thoughts for you. I think, now stay with me here, Mechagodzilla. Because the thing about Mechagodzilla is that he has all the powers of Godzilla, but he has some special characteristics from other monsters too. Like his feet, which resemble Ghidorah's, and the metal drill on the tip of his tail, which is obviously an Apex modification.
And bringing this into the guitar world, this is a lot like you. At your core, I think you're an absolute beast of a guitarist, and you've made the most of awesome influences like Jimmy Page, Eddie Van Halen, Yngwie Malmsteen, Gary Moore. But you've got your own special appointments that kind of make you perhaps the most unstoppable force in the universe. With your unbelievable alternate picking, legato combinations, your sense of melody across multiple octaves, and most importantly, in my opinion, rhythmic pocket and attention to tone and feeling. So you're pretty scary in the coolest way, just like Mechagodzilla. You've also made countless fine people of Japan scream at you in awe. And I think you're a pretty tall guy, and Mechagodzilla's freaking tall. So that's what I think. You're a supervillain doppelganger.
Well, I'll take that. Well, you thought that through, and I'll accept that compliment. That's wonderful. I'm not nearly as familiar with Mechagodzilla, although I like the name. I mean, Godzilla on its own is good. You add a mega or a mecha to it, that sounds even better. The only other one that comes to mind, and I don't really know why, other than maybe it's a Japanese thing, is there was a show called Captain Ultra that I don't think it was ever played. I mean, like Ultraman, when I was a kid, Ultraman would be played in America with English subtitles, because originally a Japanese show. But I never saw Captain Ultra until I actually lived in Japan. I saw some reruns for it there. And the villains kind of looked like people dressed up in a broccoli suit. And you know, it was all in Japanese, so I really couldn't understand what was going on. But there was like the characters were kind of like a prototypical Lost in Space, like a handsome captain and kind of a hot female sidekick, and maybe another, like there was a Robin to his Batman, kind of a sidekick guy, and then kind of like a weird alien creature, but they was friendly, and they would battle the alien broccoli creatures, and they won. They were the good guys. They won, and that was the end of the episode. And I thought, well, what's going to happen next? The next episode, and it was just the same thing. The aliens were always the same, and that surprised me, because usually, Star Trek or something, you get a different alien every episode.
Yeah.
But in Captain Ultra, the alien was always the alien broccoli suit people. And I don't really know that it doesn't answer the question at all, but that's what came to my head, so I said it.
No, I get it. It's also, maybe it's like a Japanese.
The reason I said that was just because I wanted to introduce people to Captain Ultra. I thought, rather than just talking about something people already know about, why not introduce something? I imagine most people have not seen Captain Ultra and the people in the alien broccoli marauders.
Yeah, shout out Captain Ultra. Check it out. I'm sure somebody will be able to find it. So first things first, Paul, I have a couple softball lobs for you. I call this segment Burning Questions. These are rapid fire questions. They don't totally matter. What gauge pick do you use?
There we go. It's this one's all worn out. It's a point. Sorry, I'm being slow. 0.50 millimeter. You can grab one out of the bag. I've got it handwritten. There we go. I don't know if is that showing up?
I can see it.
And regardless of what it says, the proof is in the.
Oh.
I'm not going to top that. It's about the best pick scratch I will ever do. Thank you, 0.50 millimeter Tortex.
The great thing about that pick scratch is I heard it in the analog world too. Sometimes you just hear the recording of a pick scratch, but I got both blended perfectly.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What is your number one guitar right now?
Right now, I can't find it.
It's buried under the guitars.
I got this on Reverb for like $400. Maybe it with shipping, it was a little more. It's an Ibanez Roadstar, the RS525. I didn't even know. I'd never seen it before, but I've been researching the older ones. It's just a purple and pink finish is awesome, and it's really. It's not a guitar that feels like, oh, this is a Cadillac, well built. I mean, everything Ibanez makes is great, but like my Fireman feels like a way higher quality instrument. But there's something about this. The tone is great. I mean, I put the Marzios in. It's got a Fred and a Super 2. But you know what I think I like about it is the things that I kind of like fix myself, because I'm just proud that I could repair it.
Yeah.
And one is I rewired it to have just a single volume knob. So these two are dead. And this was a hole, because I didn't want the volume knob here because I can't get to it and it gets in the way. So I took some double-sided tape and I just taped on this knob, which is connected to nothing. But it looks cool. And this knob is the volume. And this one does nothing. And then I got a switch that works. And, I got the soldering gun and soldered it myself. And the other thing is if you get a hat that's a little bit too big, you can get this one is too big, and you put these foam things. Maybe this one fit. Anyway, yeah, that one must have fit good. They sent me these foam things, and it's like a little foam with adhesive on the back, and yeah, it looks like little. And you could cut it up and put it like right under the whammy bar cavity, so it doesn't go clonk 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 anymore.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, and I put on the locking tuners myself. I didn't do a very good job. There's like, you have to measure for the little thing that keeps it from rotating, and I got it close enough, but it I didn't drill that well. So the only thing that's holding them in there is just that it's screwed on tight. But even with that flaw and the fact that it used to have a locking nut. It's still, I mean, if I set it up in advance, it tends to stay in tune pretty well, and it sounds good. It just looks good. It looks good on Skype.
It looks awesome. I thought it was like a JS when you brought it out, and then I saw the headstock. So you're kind of into vintage Ibanez right now. Is that your
Ibanez? I put my slide magnet, got that on there, so I can do some Mr. Big, I just like it because I kind of saved it. Or like when I pulled it out of the box, it had black pickups, which didn't look that good. The whammy wouldn't stay in tune, so I just like it because I fixed it.
Oh no,
the guitars were good out of the box. I didn't have to do anything.
I look at every repair I've made around my house, and I'm just like, yeah, I did that, and it's just that much sweeter. I get it. All right, moving on to these not so rapid fire questions, but they're still good. What gauge strings do you like?
Slow.
No, it's fine. Well, I like it this way too. What gauge strings do you use?
8 to 38.
Oh, right on.
Which is pretty important. I never want to fear the bend. And it's funny. Like I put on a set of 9s, and I can tell that it's okay. I can bend on 9s. I can even bend on 10s or 11s. But I can just tell that like my time is running out. Oh. That I'm going to be able to bend, but maybe not on the next song. So I start to worry a little bit. I don't want to worry. I want to just like be able to bend, and that can just last as long as I ever want. And the other thing is like really high action, because for slide playing, You want high action for that. But usually when people think about sludge, like, oh, I got to put 13s on.
Yeah.
And the strings don't really need to be thick. You just have to have high action. That's good for bending, too, because you can get a grip on it better. So the only thing, high action is not great for strumming bar chords. But I never do that anymore, so that's all right. And and I guess if you happen to do like fast legato all day, but because it's eighths, it works. It's still all right.
Awesome. What is your current number one amp?
Current number one amp is I've been using a Marshall JTM1. It's a 1 watt amp. Excuse me. I use it in the studio a bunch, and I just run it clean, and then run pedals into it. The other one, I've got a Princeton reverb sitting here because my Marshalls are in the studio, and it's similar. I just run it real clean and quiet, and this amp that's sitting next to me, I've just got it mic'd up into a mixer, and it sounds good. Pedals.
Final question on that note. What is your favorite pedal right now?
It's a combination of the JHS PG14, my signature pedal, and there we go, and a TC Electronic Mojo Mojo.
I have both of those. They're both
sort of
great.
run those together and have one boost the other, and then that's enough to get me. If I can do that, I'm all good.
That's a good tone test there. All right, we're going to move on. I want to play a little game I call Name Those Notes. I'll play you a quick sequence of guitar notes that you have recorded over the years. And you have to tell me what song these notes come from.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So we'll start with something easy that I think you'll get, and then we'll get progressively harder. Here are the first notes.
I think that's technical difficulties. Something like that.
It's exactly what it is. Racer X. This is the first piece of music I ever heard from you, actually. And it's what I would call Paul Gilbert Stage 1. And we're going to get into the many stages of your musicianship because I really love how your style has evolved. And regarding this song, however, what does it mean to you now? It's sort of like a cult classic among guitar players. I don't know if you know that or care, but what is your relationship with this song now? It's been like 22 years, I think.
Well, I remember writing it just like in the hallway of the studio. We were in Fantasy Studios in San Francisco, or Berkeley, actually, or Emeryville. And, back in those days, everything you did in the studio took a long time because it was before computers. So, the engineer would have to go through and fix every snare drum by hand and make it sound like an explosion because that was what you had to do back then. And so I didn't want to bug anybody. So I was just in the hallway, without an amp. And I remember coming up with that thing. And then at the time, I was really excited that I could pick fast because I played guitar. I started when I was around 9, and as my playing developed, I started to be able to play some faster things, but they were all left-hand driven. And whenever I would try to pick fast, it was a mess. I couldn't sync it up to anything. The tone was bad. And I finally just sort of gave up. I was like, I'll just be a legato, I can do the Van Halen snarly dog, Yeah, that kind of just making my reverb zone. I could get that sort of thing to happen, or the tapping stuff I was doing. My apologies, but I had those things together a bit. But the picking, I just couldn't do it, and I think it was finally I was playing Electric Eye, the Judas Priest song, in my cover band, and so it had that and it had that one little bit that and I could barely struggle that thing out, but I did pick everything. I couldn't believe it. I really had given up, and I was holding the pick all weird at the time, and the tone wasn't great, but it was sort of, for the first time I could kind of reach the pedals of picking.
Yeah.
And then I got out to LA, and there was a kid that when I was in the Spotlight column, people used to send me letters. You had to print your address in there, and there was one guy from California who was nice enough to find me a couch to sleep on for a week until I found an apartment. And he showed me the lick from the instructional video that I ended up making. That thing, and so and that worked. I couldn't believe it because he played it. I was like, man, what is that? It sounds amazing. And he said, "Oh, it's an Al Di Meola lick," and he showed it to me. And I never expected that I'd be able to do it, but somehow it was like the right time in my development to be fed that lick, and I digested it, and it worked. And so I was so excited about it because, again, I had just given up hope, and also like, I'm done. That's me. Look at my hands go. So I was. That's all I would do. Like for that whole year at GIT, I just sit there and I rarely played through an amp because I was always at school, like sitting in the back of the class. The guy in front would be doing some jazz walking line. I'd be back there annoying everybody. And finally, I plugged it into an amp, and it sounded terrible. And I finally got this Lee Jackson mod that had like a weird compression to it, but it worked with my technique of picking too hard. So that was like, I found a solution. This one really arcane piece of gear worked with my like aggressive picking technique, and but that's kind of all it was good for. Like anything else. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I still hear the intro of Heart of a Lion. I can't believe how awesome the tone is. But anyway, the things that were based on that lick, I just really explored it for a couple of years, and that was Technical Difficulties was kind of just a structured song where you could do all that stuff.
Yeah, it's really funny that you brought up that lick, because I prepared just a little passage with this pedal. I was going to save it for a different part of our conversation, but it feels appropriate right now. Listen to this.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And this is the pedal I use. I use your pedal. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but that lick is also something that was one of the first things I found from you. And I remember, I don't know where it was that you said, I hate that lick now, or something along those lines, but it was like, yeah, I taught everyone this lick, and oh shit, now I don't want everyone to know this lick, because actually, can you explain, like,
it's been scorned.
You don't have to like go as deep as you went in previous conversations, but like just overview, because you're literally playing it in the exact same, I think it's the 9th fret. What's up with that?
Well, here's what happened with the lick is it's a great lick for instructional videos. It's a great lick for Technical Difficulties, but besides that, it's pretty limited use.
Yes.
It's like it's you ever see one of those like trees of evolution, and you got the main trunk and then it branches off, and it's sort of like, you end with the shrew, and then it doesn't evolve further. I don't know. It's like a branch of evolution, and then I kind of felt like that's as far as that can go there, and just can't do anything else with it. So I'm going to come back to the main trunk and then keep trying to go up. That's a weird metaphor. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I get it.
And also the other thing is, because I teach so much, I mean, that's like a mirror held up, because the students will come in and they'll play stuff, and I'll kind of see what they're doing with it, and it's a difficult lick to make music with.
Yeah.
It's just, it's just such a limited application. It's like if you got a toolbox and you find yourself like, man, I'm using the Phillips head screwdriver all the time. Like it's just every day is Phillips head. And then I get this one weird shaped Allen wrench that's really good for the opening up this one thing. But besides that, I just never use it. And if I try to use it, it doesn't work. And then, so that's what it's like. It's really good for that one thing. But besides that, most other jobs, it's the wrong tool for the job.
I got you. Makes sense to me. All right, here's
and let me give you that. But I did, the thing I should say is, I didn't really like that answer. I didn't want to give people the bad news of like, oh, you spent 10 years working on this, and it's just was, might as well just flush that time down the toilet. So what I started to do is try to figure out what can we do? There must be something good. And so the first thing is that if you're in a minor key, if you're in E minor, there's kind of two spots where your fingers don't have to change and you can use that lick. One is where the top note is the root. Now it's so fast that you're not really doing a lot of melodic emphasis anyway. Mm-hmm. But that minor six can be a troublesome note. If you're playing Crazy Train, it's great because Crazy Train's got that, or Operation Mindcrime, those have the minor six, so that's all right. But often, if you're playing like AC/DC or something, it has more the Dorian blues flavor, and it has a major sixth, and so the solution there, if you don't want to change your fingering, so you're back in E minor, tune up your ear, is move it down where B is the top note, and then you get the fifth, the fourth, the third, and the ninth. And in general, the top note is the one that gets the emphasis. And so here you're emphasizing the fifth. And that tends to be a better choice of notes, just melodically. So that's solution number one. Solution number two is rhythmically try to find things in it that instead of being 16th-note triplets, which it kind of lends itself to that, whether it's picked or not, but then try to make some 16th-note patterns with it. So like I've been doing this a lot with my students, like where I'll do like that's the thing where it's more of a 16th, like 1, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think of one that I was doing lately. And you've got to do like a big jump down into the lower string, and that's kind of just rhythmically a different way to look at it, and making different patterns, so it's not just the same thing up and down. It's less exercisey. We're trying to kind of like insert some music and pull the exercisiness out of it.
I definitely appreciate the musical side of making exercises feel less like exercises. And one other thing that I discovered from that particular exercise was changing the intervals. Where can I apply this to different parts of a scale and things like that? So thanks for that. Thanks for putting it out there.
You're welcome.
I have another batch of notes for you to guess what they are.
Okay, here we go. I need that again. Oh, that's I Am Satan, I think.
Yes, it is.
I can't remember. That was what I on that album. I tuned everything down a whole step. So I remember it being in D, but it probably sounds like it's in C. I think, yeah, that's. And I remember I used a Frampton chord.
Yep.
It was like, "Hey Judy, can you remember how we met? You say you'll never forget, 'cause you love me. And I love you too." I wondered now. I've never played that on melody. It's my melody test. If I know it in my head, can I get it out the first take? So 1, 2, 3, that's the root, and the fifth. All right, skip the end. Anyway, we got most of it.
Yeah,
Without looking, it actually helped to. It helped not to look.
I was wondering if there were like tabs up there or something. You're like, oh, that's it. That's what it is. I think
in intervals.
yeah, exactly. This is easily one of my. This might be an interesting take, but this is like one of my favorite songs of yours, and it's sort of like if the Beatles and Of Montreal had a baby, and then that baby got really into Rush, but still wanted to preserve its pop songwriting sensibilities. That's like this song.
That's a co-write with Linus of Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
Who's a songwriting genius. I love Linus's writing. He also like saved a Mr. Big album. The one, what was the like the reunion one we did, What If, which is the album I really like. And we had a bunch of like riff rock, and Linus came in and wrote a bunch of choruses and like made the riff rock into songs.
Yeah, it's great, and your voice is just really, really nice on that. I like your voice in that iteration and in the iteration of Everybody Use Your Blinkers. That's also the more gnarly rock and roll sound.
Everybody use your goddamn. It's so good to know your
signals. Yeah, that's great. Was that inspired by anything, by the way?
Is what?
Did you get cut off? Is that why you wrote that song?
I used to live in the Hollywood, like at the very beginning of the Hollywood Hills, and all the tourists were trying to find the Hollywood sign, and they would just park, and you know, they're like looking. This is sort of a little bit pre-GPS, so people, I don't know, still had a map or something, and people would just stop on the street, and they wouldn't have the, you know, it's like, are they going to park or what are they? I wouldn't know what they were going to do. And so it's like, is it safe to go around them? And it was like every day I would be coming home to my house, and there'd be people, you know, trying to find the Hollywood sign. They just, you know, they'd be in the middle of the street, not moving or moving real slow. And so it was, you know, basically LA traffic, but especially Hollywood Hills sign finders.
I got you. Makes sense. All right.
Next. And it's fun. I'm hoping that I get some credit in inventing a new style of music called cantankerous rock.
That might be the most cantankerous rock song of all. You've done it. You've invented a new genre.
Well, the Atmosphere and the Moon are pretty cantankerous. It's like I'm so annoyed at young people that I want to just leave the planet.
Well, I'll let you expand on that in a minute. Let's get to another group of notes, and we're getting a little bit more difficult and obscure, but I think you'll still be all right. Here we go.
Well, it must be one of those Japan solos.
That's exactly what it is.
I don't know which
It's
one.
not even a song. It's just a moment.
Somebody showed me that lick. I can't remember. It wasn't. I didn't invent that one. Like it might have been Kurt James. Might have showed that to me.
Shout out to Kurt James.
Yeah, Kurt James. He was. I think like right after Yngwie left Steeler. Kurt might have been in Steeler for a while. He was in Black Sheep or before or after I was in it. I can't remember. He was really good guitar player. But real nice combination of like Hendrix kind of stuff and Yngwie. Real good instincts. You know, I don't think he was like really methodical, or wasn't like a metronome guy. He was just like sat down and, well, I can do this, and you know, he actually kind of got me back into Hendrix too, because as much of an Yngwie guy as he was, he gave me a cassette of him doing all Hendrix songs, and he was doing Third Song from the Sun, and he was always like had some old Strat with whammy. And he's and I, you know, when I heard him do it, suddenly all the guitar parts kind of made sense to me. And he sounded killer, and he used to do stuff like light his guitar on fire, and so I hung out with Kurt a lot, and I think he was the one that showed me. I think I stole that from him. If it wasn't him, I stole it from somebody.
Well, you definitely made it your own. It sounds it weaves perfectly into the rest of that performance, that 10-minute guitar solo in Tokyo. All right, got one more group of notes for you here. This may bring us into the present. Who knows?
Oh, that's probably from the JHS thing. We're doing Running with the Devil.
Yes, it is.
And man, that was challenging. I mean, to learn the JHS guys were great, but just to play David Lee Roth on your guitar. The one I'm trying to get lately is, and this is actually an easy one, but it reminds me of David Lee Roth, because Van Halen used to cover Last Child, the Aerosmith song, you know. Taking back to South Tallahassee. And this stuff that, I mean, when Steven Tyler sings that, it's really more like a guitar line. And the guitar solo is just killer. Joe Perry. I learned the rock. There's a Joe Perry riff called "I Got the Rock and Rolls Again." I was learning that the other day. I love it's anyway. My apologies. I get on these tangents.
No, you don't. I love it. It is Slide. I mean, I haven't always associated you with Slide, but it's definitely something you've brought to the forefront over the past at least couple of years, if not longer. Is that a conscious effort? And I want to use this as a bridge to kind of talk about your arc, because I think you started as, you know, obviously you're doing a lot of the shrapnel style stuff in the earlier 80s or late 80s, whatever. And then slowly it's mutated over the years as I followed, like I was going through your discography and kind of checking out not only your playing, but also your tone. And it's kind of mutated from this metal sound, very, very in your face, very articulate, into this warmer, for lack of a better word, like this rock feel that kind of went from, like, I would say starting with Yngwie, Vinnie Moore, that mold, into Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix style. Obviously it's Paul Gilbert on top of all that, but I'm just trying to draw comparisons. Is this something that has been organic, or is it something that you've done intentionally? What would you say to my assessment of your growth?
Well, I think one of the things that made it happen was this little practice amp that I had on the road. It was an orange squeezer. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about this big. It looks cool. Little orange amp, you know, with 9-volt battery amp. And I bought it right at the beginning of I think it was a Mr. Big tour. And it looks really cool, but it doesn't sound great. And no amp that's that big sounds any good. So it's not. I'm not blaming Orange. You know, you could all the amps that big are kind of not so great. But But it was, you could hear it. At least I could hear my notes. Mm-hmm. And what I found was that a lot of this like real precise picking stuff that I was known for wouldn't work with that amp. It was like the opposite of that Lee Jackson mod where suddenly all my picking worked. This was like the picking killer. I tried to just like everything I did with fast picking sounded bad. But if I played Mississippi Queen by Leslie West or Mountain, that sounded pretty good through that little amp. So if I just went like, there it is. Playing about that speed and with that style, that sounded great through that little amp. And so I think like as time, I just like started aiming towards that. And at the same time, when we're doing the tour, we're not like famous enough to have our own amps. So, we every especially like doing, festivals, you do a fly-in festival, you do Sweden Rock, and, to ship your amps to Sweden, you're going to spend all your money on shipping and not make any money. So you rent backline and you get like, some JCM 900 that's the tubes were, there's still the original tubes, and every Motorhead tour in the world has rented those. And, so the thing's barely working. So, I was playing through amps that sounded like a big version of the Orange amp, just like, everything I played through is horrible, except if I play. Like somehow that will work. That will, like, no matter how crappy the amp is, that lick will still sound good. And I started to realize, like, even when I get my good amp where everything does work, that lick still is better.
Yeah, like, I get what you mean.
So it was just like finding, and it could, and at the same time, my hearing was getting worse, and I think I started to just like really crave clarity. And so sometimes if everything's perfect and the planets are aligned, I've got the ultimate amp and the right pedals, and even if I'm playing it perfect, it's still like, man, all the fast stuff is just sort of blurry because of my hearing is, I can't hear above 1K. And it's funny, you're talking about my sound being warmer. It's like, well, first of all, I can't tell because I can take the treble knob on my mixer and all the way down, all the way up. I can't tell the difference, but I can hear low frequencies really well. So like my sandbox is like 1K and below. So and like, I mean, I get a sense of treble, but it's more guesswork. It's more like, Stevie Wonder deciding what suit he's going to wear. It's like, who knows? But yeah, I was saying just trying to be able to hear myself, and also when I play live, a lot of times I just wear earplugs, and so a lot of the faster stuff I just can't hear it. And people ask me like, why don't you use 24 frets? It's like, I can't hear those high notes; they're gone. So I tend to like, but if I'm brought the slide, if I play, I can still make that out. Like that registers, and I think I can also hear like variation in pitch really well. So things like vibrato become important to me. But like texture kind of things, and I remember texture being really important. Like I remember, especially for like jugga jugga kind of stuff. I guess it's called gent now. Where if you're, I mean, I used to love that texture much more than I do now. Like there was a band called Loudness from Japan, and they had it's a little hard. I don't know if it's even on Spotify. An album called Disillusions. If you can find Disillusions by Loudness, man, awesome guitar playing and tones. And he's got the opening track, Crazy Doctor. Like, 1, 2, 3. And it's where I got like into the night. It's just like metal, such good metal on that record. And but that to me, I don't hear. I know there's beauty in there. I can still kind of feel it, but I don't have the equipment to hear that with the same accuracy as I did when I was younger. So now, if I hear like somehow like the vibrato, you know what it is too? Is like it seems like when I watch the people that play my stuff, like the other day, the new single called "Argument About Pie," and there was a guy who posted his performances of it on YouTube. And I was curious because the comments were really good, so I turned it on, and he nailed the shred stuff, perfect. And I was pretty impressed, because he got, a lot of it's like kind of tricky fingerings, and he got like note for note perfect. The tone was great, it was just like, man, he's got it. And then the melody came up, and that's where I got to feel like I'm, I've still got something going on. It's all right, you got the notes, but the expressive stuff it's just a lot more personal. It's like your own fingerprint. Everybody hears their vibrato a different way, and it's a little harder to follow me into that part of the forest. I'm a little harder to track. So I almost feel like some of the technical stuff, like a robot is always going to win. Because anyway, you get a lot of sameness. Like the notes are the same tone, and they're the same length. It's like 16th notes, so there's no long and short. It's all the same length, and maybe the same same length, same picking attack, same tone. But when you get into melodies, it's all this contrast. Some notes are short, some notes are long, some notes are muted, some notes sustained. The length of the rhythms and the dynamics change. Much harder for a computer to beat you there. So if I play melody, I feel like I'm a human being and I still got a chance. When I play fast, I feel like the robot might still beat me.
Yeah, I've had the privilege to talk to many really great guitar players, and the one common ground I've found is vibrato and intonation. It's just the thing that's overlooked most, especially by players starting out. Like, you look at the attractive shiny shred thing, if you want to call it that, just group it into that box. But really anything that appears impressive as opposed to sounds impressive. I think an amazing bend, that's always going to hit me a lot harder and is a better measure of a guitar player's skill than how quick they can do something. And that, I'm not that old, but I have been playing for a while, and like I feel like I'm that sort of generational difference between, call it gent or whatever you want to say, where there's flashy shred stuff and then there's feeling and emotion. I don't think those two are separated. I just think on the surface, maybe social media perpetuates people to pay attention to that faster stuff a lot more than if a guy were to post an amazing solo that consists of 7 notes and they're all beautifully, perfectly bent and intonated. I don't know if there's a solution there, but it's just like I feel like I'm in a club.
Yeah. Well, I think electric guitar, it's hard to do that. I mean, I can make it easy. I come to my online school and I know how to teach that stuff.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, they have a hard time finding. There's a lot of it has to do with hand position, and just like what part of the finger is touching the string is actually a huge deal. But I had an interesting thing happen. I had this one student, and they were playing technical difficulties, trying to do this stuff, and I'm showing them the vibrato stuff, and it's okay. And then they knew I was into melodies, so they decided they were going to play a melody, and they used the whammy bar for vibrato, kind of like surf.
Yeah.
So it was, I got to get a bit of whammy guitar. So basically it was like, no vibrato at all until you heard the whammy. awesome. Like they sounded so much better doing that than they did because the hand vibrato didn't have it developed yet. So if they would try to go, it was like, but they did the whammy. It was like, just do that. That's fine. It's like not everybody has to play the same. But for me, growing up in the '70s, that was. I started playing before Van Halen came out, so I was listening to Jimmy Page doing the. And that was just like, to me, that was it. That was the goal. Or listen to Ace Frehley. Or it was like the guitar playing Hart was awesome when he was doing Magic Man, stuff like that. That was just, that's all you heard on the radio was all these guys with great vibrato or Dream On. Or Bad Company, Rock Steady, Rock Steady, and that slow, beautiful, or Brian May, of course. Or what was the Kansas one?
Wayward Son.
Everybody was doing that. That was ubiquitous. It was just like that was part of the guitar player checklist. And then you get like up to about Metallica, and it became less important. There was a shift in what people were digging. So with Metallica, I don't know the notes, but you have more of this chug, 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 and that becomes the thing that everybody wants, and which is fine. I mean, not all music or guitar playing has to be the same, but you sort of choose your favorites. And to me, growing up in that era, that's what my ear got used to. But it's funny, like how like if you've got a young kid and they do a drawing. It doesn't have to be technically perfect to be cool.
Right. It's better if it's not sometimes.
If you see like a 4-year-old kid draw a dinosaur, you don't go like, hey, well, it's technically, that leg shouldn't be that long. That's wrong. It's an awesome dinosaur. And to me, some of like the early rock vibrato is kind of like that. You hear like George Harrison with that song, I Got a Feeling. I got a feeling. And then the guitar line is like, it's like real janky, but to me it's I wouldn't change it. It's like he probably had a rap G string too, so it's like you got to give him, back then they hadn't figured out the plain G string yet, and so you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But there's things like that where rock music is being born by kids that are untrained, other than they're all self-taught and trying to figure out how to do this. And then, Clapton and Hendrix and Beck come along, and then they start playing like grown-ups. It starts being like, man, the dinosaur's starting to really look like a dinosaur. And
yeah, my favorite Beatles solo that comes to mind with that is Taxman, where it's like,
oh, yeah.
it's almost like
whatever. I got one.
Yeah,
that's one awesome. Was McCartney. There was the one at the end of I think it's Another Girl, where is that the one? What key did that in? Oh, I've got another girl, and it's got like the most out of control vibrato at the end. I think McCartney played the solo on it. And again, like this is. Who knows what horrible string gauge he had on there, and he's a bass player.
Yeah.
And you can give him a million excuses, but it wasn't like the smooth Brian May. that you had, later as technique evolved for vibrato. And I wouldn't change it for anything. It's that kind of vibrato is like like a kid dinosaur. It gets the point across. A lot of times even better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a cool thing about you, like I mentioned at the top of this show, your repertoire is just seemingly endless, and really your attention to the rhythm section and the melody is really cool to watch you do. And it makes sense that now you have this album coming out where you play all the instruments, right?
Man, playing the drums was so much fun. I'm really jealous. Like whenever I finally get this album on the road, whoever gets to play drums is going to have such a good time.
Dude, great.
The parts I came up with, I mean, they don't have to play the exact part, but just the way the songs are put together, it's really fun to play drums in these tunes.
Really great drum fills by you. Good job. I don't know how much you played drums before that, but like it takes a lot to have a vocabulary on any instrument. But I've tried my hand at drums before. I took some drum classes in college, and just being able to transition between verse, section, bridge, chorus, etc. is hard enough, but then making it feel like it's cohesive. It's sort of like recording music with fake drums. It always feels like it's section after section. And you did a really good job. I want to play this little snippet here.
I got my biddle up in there.
Dude, the biddle bops they're all over the place. I love it all. And I've only, the two singles that have come out are both really awesome. And can you give a little insight as to how that recording process go? Where I assume there was somebody pressing record, but like, how did that whole thing?
We had an engineer that helped a lot.
Yeah. How did it all come together?
Well, a lot of it, it's hard to rehearse with a whole band when it's just you.
Yeah.
So basically no rehearsal for anything. But I'd have an idea of the arrangement of the song and the melody. And so I'd go in, and the first thing we had to do is the click track, which is a little tricky because on this album, for whatever reason, I probably did more tempo and groove changes within the songs than I ever have done in my life, which in a way is kind of a Black Sabbath Iron Maiden thing to do. They would, have these, suddenly cut to the 6/8 part. Now halftime, they do a lot. So, for that, you've got to get the click track worked out. So we'd put sort of a rough click. I'd play along with it, listen to it, then make an adjustment. And then it might take us like 3 hours to get the click track together. And actually, while we're doing that, I'm kind of fine tuning the arrangement, because I might be listening to it back and go like, that last chorus, it doesn't need to be double length, or, make that kind of thing. So finally, when we get the click track, I just play a rough guitar, so I've got a map, and I go in and play the drums. Usually it would take me about 10 takes. Like the first 2 takes, I'm just sussing out, like, what's my kick drum figure, I haven't played drums. I don't practice them. I don't have a kid at home. Well, now I've got a kid at home because it was so much fun. I finally got one. But, just playing the song basically. And then, by about take 5, I'm starting to get it, but I'm not warmed up yet. And by take 10, I've almost completely exhausted, but I'm starting to really get the song. And so, like, then we go back and listen and basically take 9 and 10 together and make a good drum track. And then I start putting the real guitars on them. And probably one good rhythm part, then put the melody on. And then if it needs any keys, I can barely, I have really primitive piano technique, but if it needs like a I can put one of those in. And then bass is always last, because bass is tricky. The kind of songs I'm writing, it's a lot. It's either like, sort of Beatley, like, for example, Argument About Pie is kind of Queenish in a way, because the chord, if you take like a D7 and put the third in the bass, that's the We Are the Champions chord. You go, we are the champion, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We So that's, and I use that in Argument Pie. Pie. You can never get in another pie. That is a miracle. You'll be sharing song. Yeah, we really have to try. Dirty white boy chord. That's Todd Rundgren. And then 12 Days of Christmas. 12 French hens, 2 turtle doves, you know. So, wait, what was? Oh, the bass part. Yeah. So it's just, I'm not just doing like, you know, Judas Priest. You know, and I love Ian Hill, man. When I saw Judas Priest, I mean, as much as I love Scott Travis, Ian Hill drove that band. So it was just such a serious groove doing that one note. But in my tune, I need to play like almost like a solo on the bass. You know, I can't do it now, but it's really like brain intensive because I have to follow the changes and make it, you know, make it work with the song. And so that was like, you know, my that was using up every little ounce of gray matter I have to get those bass parts worked out.
Yeah, the bass.
And really, they weren't worked out. That was the thing. It was all just like on the fly, and you know, fortunately, you can with Pro Tools you can fix a bad note once in a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say a thunderous ovation shook the columns, which was the song that I played there, and Werewolves of Portland, in case I didn't mention the album title. But there are moments where the bass, it's basically those little interludes, like those 2-bar interludes where the guitar and the bass kind of meet up with each other, and the bass is real up high, and it's like, and then it goes into another groove, which it's not necessarily halftime, but it's just, I call it empty time. The verses of that song where it's very wide open and there's actually points of silence. I always love that in contrast to what happens in the other parts of the song. So I'm looking forward to hearing that, man. It's June 4th is the release date. Is that right? And then you also have your lessons that you teach, and that's sort of like a school, and it's one-on-one as well.
The way Artist Works is the Rock Online Guitar School.
Mm-hmm.
And it works with something that they invented called video exchange. And it sounds, well, let me tell you what it is. It's you sign up and you have access to everything. Mm-hmm. Everything being mainly 2 things: the online guitar course, which is, you know, tons and tons of videos that sort of go in order, and you know, from beginner to crazy, and then the video exchange archive, which is like over 10,000 videos that I've made. And the way a video exchange works is anybody who signed up can send in a video, and it could really have anything. I mean, the school kind of encourages you to keep it connected to the course, but to tell you the truth, I don't care. I just want to hear you play, you know, whatever you got. And I listen, and you know, you can ask questions. Videos, you can do anything. You know, you can ask a question, or, you know, show me your gear, whatever it is. And then I do a video response video, and those 2 videos get paired together, you know, the question and the answer, and put on the site, and everybody can watch that. So when I do that lesson for that individual person, you know, everybody who's signed up can watch my answer, and so that way, you know, even though I'm teaching one person, everybody can learn from it, and those are all put in the archive. And actually, I would say like everything on the album. My new album, that's not a melody, came from lessons that I gave at that school. Because what happens is, like, I like to teach with musical examples, and pretty much every one of my lessons starts with me counting to 4 and playing a short, you know, 2 or 4 bar riff, and that's the lesson. Then I talk about it and explain it. But I invent that riff to help the student. So if I see the student and they want to learn how to pick, I'll invent a little picking riff. And so, for example, one of the songs, not released, it's called "Hello North Dakota," and it's got a line in it that goes, it's an F sharp minor, and it goes like something like that. I may have forgotten it, but that was a picking exercise that I showed. Or another one was I wanted to show a kid how to like move their wrist, and so another riff from that song is where they've got to get like way under the guitar and then come up over with a bend, so they got to be able to do this big chip. But after I wrote that riff, I'm like, man, I'm using that for a song. That's a killer riff. So as I do those lessons, I catalog them on my own computer, and I have like a file like 2,000 riffs or those solo ideas that came from teaching, and they all came from those moments of inspiration, and that's what I like. So I use those to kind of fill in the blanks between the melodies that I write.
Yeah, it's one of the things that one of the greatest joys I've taken from teaching, other than seeing the light bulb turn on. That's probably like the best moment, but then just selfishly the benefit that I get from teaching, it's like I'm learning while I teach, and you're always kind of exposing yourself to something new without necessarily meaning to do that, and it's one of the great joys of education. So I have
just get to spend time with people who like music.
Yeah, what could be better? So I have one final question for you, Paul. I want to loop in your guitar supervillain alter ego, Mecha Godzilla.
All right.
What do you believe about guitar that most guitar players might think is insane? This could be a hard truth that guitar players need to hear, or something that other players don't. What is it? What do we get on your high horse? Get on your soapbox. Tell the world what they need to
rant
know.
all day.
Rant. This is your time.
The first thing that comes to mind is that, and I'm speaking to my younger self. I wish someone had told me this earlier.
Great.
Is that rhythm? It doesn't only mean accompaniment playing on the lower strings. So if rhythm doesn't just mean that you're down here, going. That's one meaning of rhythm. But rhythm it still is a valid concept even when you're playing on the higher strings and you're the soloist. So it doesn't, when you're doing a solo, it doesn't suddenly mean that, I don't need that rhythm thing anymore. It's still a really valuable tool, and it still requires kind of a vocabulary. And the best way to build that is you try different grooves, because they're all their own kind of their own world. To me, the main categories are like it's either a shuffle or it's not, and shuffles will build character, and to me they're fun. But if you pick a shuffle, I mean, it could be a slow one. The slowest shuffle would be like the Zoo by the Scorpions. 1, 2, 3. That's like a really slow shuffle, and that's one groove you could develop. So what you're trying to do is like, you got your notes. And then you try to build phrases that have such a strong rhythm in them that a listener could deduce the groove, even if they didn't hear the drummer. So if you go, you can tell that that's inside of you. You're communicating that, even with no drums. And as a teenager, I would let the drummer do that, and over the top, I'm going. I like that because it's full of energy.
Yeah.
I still like to have that in the toolbox, but it's of limited use.
That's like using the power drill the entire time.
And then, it's like you don't want the whole movie to be car chases.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that analogy of being able to deduce the groove based on the solo. I've really only heard that melodically. Like you should be able to hear the chords without the chords behind you as far as your melodic phrasing. But that's really even healthier to have that foundation.
I'll give you an exercise that I gave to myself, and I haven't heard anybody. I've given it to my students, and some of them almost get it. But it's the exercise is to give yourself a really strict rhythmic structure, and for exercise purposes, you can't change it. You have to do the structure. And the structure is Highway to Hell, which starts on the end of 3. You go 1 and 2 and 3. And that's very syncopated. And so you get your foot stomping, and first of all, just play it like an octave higher. So you're playing it as a solo, but you're keeping that rhythmic structure. The 1 and 2 and then you have to internalize that rhythm and put in any notes you want, but don't change the rhythm. You can't add an extra note. You have to like 1 and 2 and 3. And that'll humble you.
It almost sounds like Angus's solo too. Maybe he was doing that without even realizing it.
Yeah, but what happens is like because we have our licks, you go into it and you want to finish your lick even though it doesn't fit the rhythm. So and like, but you don't need that many. You only need is da da da, but I've got more notes. It's like it doesn't matter. You have to, and what it does, it helps you come up with endings. Because each of those phrases has an ending, and endings are tricky because an ending means you're emphasizing something, and emphasis is really scary because if you emphasize a weak note, it doesn't feel right. So it really helps in figuring out what to emphasize, what not to emphasize. You real quickly you get a sense of like where the chord tones are, how to land on them in a stylish way as opposed to sound like a robot. And that's like really helpful. The other one is Waiting for the Bus. ZZ Top song, which emphasizes the and of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and and you stomp that out. And when you play your solo, you always have to come around and like hit that and of 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then I miss one. But when I miss one, I know I missed it.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is like my job as a teacher is basically to be an educated set of ears. So, I know when I miss it, but a lot of times the students, they don't know when they miss it.
Yeah.
So it's my job to go like, hey, this is what you're listening for. Focus your ear on this beat. And rhythm is, I think it's hard to learn because it's not a visual thing. I don't make anybody sight read, and I don't know if sight reading is really the way to go about it. But notes are easier to see, and we're visual creatures. Our eyes, our brain has devotes most of the space to our sight, and so you can see where a note is. Oh, that's what it looks like. But how do you see the and of 4? It's not. I mean, you can. There is notation, but to me, that's not the solution. It's got to be something that you practice, internalize. You learn a bunch of songs that have the end of 4. Your Highway Star 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's the same as Live Wire by Motley Crue. And you get familiar with that accent, what it feels like, be able to stomp on the 1, so you have a relationship. You got a rant out of me. Woohoo!
I love it. That was a healthy educational rant. It's perfect. And yeah, something you said kind of hit home with me. Taking notes away from guitar players, like telling them they can't play. It's like, no, I still have more. And it just reminded me of, I think Miles Davis said this. I think he said something along the lines of, sometimes the best notes are the ones that you don't play. And that took me, I'm still trying to learn how to play the guitar, but like the leaving the notes on the table concept is just something that the sooner you can learn to practice doing that. And one of the hardest things, people say, what's the hardest thing you know on guitar? And I'm like, well, I know how to practice. And, you know, there's a difference between sitting down and noodling and actually trying to work something out. And it doesn't have to be monotonous, but it does have to be focused, I think. But yeah, leaving notes on the table, I think is so healthy and good in any musical genre or any instance, but especially guitar solos. So like all that space, it lets you kind of.
I'll give you one more thing that's like great for ear training and for playing too. And that is, you know, do blues and pick a note and stay there until you can't stand it. You know, in a blues, you can do that. Like you can play A blues and just play A as your solo. You know. You know, you can do that the whole time. But what you do is you're listening, and you start to crave another note, and that's wonderful. Because when you crave it, let yourself have it. But now you're playing from what you're hearing in your head rather than what your fingers want to do. So, for example, I'm going to pick the fifth instead of the root. So I go, let me set up I got to train you. I'll start from the five. Now I'll play the fifth. And I wanted to hear that. And I wanted to hear, like, I was, because I'm really trying to stand as much, and just I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed that. I needed it, because if I didn't go there, it would have been too much. I would have overdosed on that note. And you start to go like, I can't take this note anymore. It's driving me crazy. And then you ask yourself, well, what else do I want? And you do it by ear. You do it by singing, and then you find it on the guitar. And that's a great exercise, rather than like, I'm just gonna, you know, just sort of, I've got this pattern, and I'm gonna play through the pattern. It's like, you'll just end up meandering. But if you like I can't leave it until I hear, and I'm just craving something else. You know, I'm just gonna eat curry until I can't stand it anymore, and then I've got to have a grapefruit, and then the grapefruit really has meaning.
Yeah.
You know, so
honestly, what you were describing there felt like I was on a diet, and that fifth was my diet. I'm just eating smoothies and kale, and then I resolved down to that third, and I'm just like, oh, there's the ice cream. But you can't have too much of the ice cream, because then the ice cream's not that sweet anymore, and you get huge and fat.
Yeah, you can start with the ice cream, but after a while, you're like, geez, you know, I need an orange, you know.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time and all the insight and education. This has been a great honor to chat with you. As we wind down the show, I'll look forward to, since you're on Guitar Villains, I'm going to look forward to what treacherous plots you devise next in your musical endeavors.
Well, I've got one more thing. When you do future interviews, here's a question that I want you to ask other people. And that is, if you're by yourself in your studio or your practice room,
okay,
and you're playing, and then unexpectedly somebody walks in, what is it that you wish you were playing that they caught you playing, and you're kind of proud of it? Yep, that's what I was playing. Because that happened to me once. My wife walked in, and this is what I was playing. Or no. And I was so happy that she walked in and caught me doing that. I was like, see, I'm cool. Like that was, if she walked in, I'm going but I was happy to be caught playing that lick.